So on my Flickr, I was requested to make this video, so if that's why it seems kind of random to pop up on my channel, that's why. But this is definitely a topic I have touched upon throughout the years since I began my YouTube channel in 2016, but I've actually never really made like a full dedicated video, so I hope this can help. I just want to say that no matter what you're going through, whether you're grieving the loss of somebody or you're struggling with your mental health, or you're just dealing with stress in life, everyone handles things differently. And one thing that really bothers me is that people always project themselves onto others and expect you to behave the way that they would in a situation. And this has definitely happened to me over the years. Like back when I had comments on YouTube, sometimes I would have some pretty rude people telling me that like the way I talked about my parents was wrong, or that like the way that they perceived my grief was wrong. And whatever you're going through, it's such a personal experience. It's so personal to you and like your relationship with the person that you lost, or what is specifically going on in your life. We all are different, and there isn't like a right and a wrong way to like deal with things. Obviously, if you're being self-destructive and you're hurting yourself or you're hurting other people, then that's different. But we all have our own ways of coping, and I can say firsthand from like my experience with loss, because I've dealt with it more than once in my life, that I've handled it differently depending on like what age I was at and what else I was going through and how like mature I was or wasn't. So there isn't like this set book on how to handle things. And for me, dolls have really helped me through the tough times, and not just with grief. So I will talk about like how they helped me, particularly dealing with like the loss of my parents, but there have been other things that have like are more, I guess, relevant to my life now, more recent things that I've gone through that they have really helped me with. So this video is going to focus on a lot of things. So if you are new here or you just haven't watched like all of my videos, I have lost both of my parents. I lost my mom when I was 11 to cancer, and then my dad when I was not quite 21, also from like cancer related things. He was technically cancer-free, but he had scar tissue that they went to go operate on, and his health was so bad from like what the cancer had done to him that he just didn't make it. I lost both my parents in a 10-year span, and I also lost my grandmother kind of in the middle of that. So I was no stranger to like loss and grief, but I definitely handled things a lot worse when my mom passed away. I was playing with dolls at the time because I was a little kid, and they were definitely helpful because they were a form of escape. And I think above all, like that's ultimately what helped me with whatever I was going through in life, whether it was losing somebody or whether it was just like dealing with my mental health problems. They were an escape from that. They gave me something else to focus on, and they brought me comfort. And I know that that's going to be different person to person, and it's totally normal if you experience something like losing a parent or someone really close to you, or having some kind of traumatic thing in life happen. Of course, you're going to be a different person, and to expect that you're going to be the same, that your interests are going to be the same, isn't fair to yourself. It's okay to change, and if like you liked dolls or collected something before and then you genuinely lose interest and like you kind of reevaluate your life and priorities and you stop collecting dolls, or you stop having an interest in them, or you just need a break, that's totally normal and fine. For me, I've always found like in the time that I was embracing my love of dolls, they helped me through. And admittedly, it wasn't always healthy. I have struggled with the past and still struggle with sometimes compulsively buying them, and not like to the point where like I don't have credit cards, I don't have any kind of like credit card debt, I never have, but there were times that I wasn't always the most responsible, and it was by far a learned habit from my dad, because after my mother passed away, he sort of overcompensated and bought me and my sister dolls. And you know, our home life was pretty dysfunctional because he was struggling with depression, and there was just a lot of unpleasantries that were going on, and he would try to make up for it by buying us dolls, and then that kind of fed into me relying on that as a bit of like a pick-me-up all the time, which isn't necessarily healthy. But just like the act of playing with my dolls, or like styling their hair, or just holding them brought me some sort of comfort. And I had other outlets too, I should say, but because someone asked me specifically about how dolls help me through, and that's what this is going to focus on. But I have like other interests in other outlets, and I always have. When like I first lost my mom, and when I first lost my dad, obviously like my initial thought wasn't to like play with dolls or to buy dolls. I think that for me, the first like few days or few weeks, I was so shocked and traumatized, especially when my mom passed away, that I didn't have the interest, but I would still like bring my dolls with me and like hold them, and especially like American Girls are very cuddly, so they help me out. With my dad, I do remember I had like some dolls that I got at the flea market, some Bratz dolls, and I do remember I couldn't eat, I couldn't like really sleep, I was kind of catatonic most of the day, the first few days after he passed away. I mean, we had like the funeral arrangements and all of that to do, and like other adult things. My dad had a lot of like unfinished business that me and my sister had to take care of. But when we were at home, I didn't necessarily have like the energy to do much else, but I do remember styling hair, and that felt very therapeutic to me at the time, to just sit there and like, I remember specifically one of my Rock Angels, Yasmin's, I did her hair in a million braids just because like that repetitive act of braiding made me feel better. That's definitely still very true to the distraction helping me today. Like the past couple of years, since I went on my YouTube break, actually not long after I took a break from uploading to YouTube in 2021, I've been dealing with a lot of stuff, and honestly, like, I've struggled with feeling like really depressed in kind of situational way, not necessarily because my anxiety was out of control, because I do struggle with anxiety, and I have my whole life as far back as I can remember, and like I've never been clinically diagnosed, but it's very apparent to me that, you know, it's not normal or healthy, like the amount of anxiety that I've dealt with on like a day-to-day basis since I was a kid. I mean, and over like really simple things too. I have a lot of like intrusive thoughts that I have to deal with on a day-to-day basis, and some of them are very irrational and very like so loud that I can't hear anything else basically in my head. And one of the ways that I have found to kind of combat those thoughts when they get really bad, especially during stressful times, is by distracting myself with something doll related. Now it could be like hairstyling, like I mentioned before, or taking photos or editing videos. Generally speaking, I don't really want to film when I'm like that, but just sitting at the computer and editing stuff is very like distracting because I'm focused on what I'm doing. Doing doll research, just like browsing photos that people have on Flickr of dolls I really like. I don't watch videos, but I do like to like look at pictures. Fixing up dolls, cleaning dolls, dusting my dolls, organizing my dolls. These are all like healthy outlets that I've found without spending money to, I guess, distract myself. And that's kind of one of the main things if you're someone like me and you have a lot of anxiety and you hyperfixate on like even stupid things and you play them over and over and over and over in your head. It's really important to distract yourself. It can be very, very difficult, but I do find that even if I can't fully shut off those thoughts, that at least I am able to put more of my energy into something else, and that reduces like my stress levels and my anxiety levels some. And they've really been something I've turned to the past couple of years again. And that's part of like what led to me getting into Cabbage Patch dolls and just more into them. It's hard to believe that one can get more into dolls when they're at the level I am at, which is full immersion, full lifestyle being dolls, but it definitely, I have found that I'm even more interested in them, and I think that that's ultimately like a good thing. And that doesn't mean that I'm always, when I'm going through things, whether I'm grieving the loss of somebody or I'm depressed or I'm really stressed out, that I can give my full attention to dolls. because there are times when I am just so bummed out that I could get something really special, like buy a new doll that's really special that I've wanted for years, and I just don't really feel anything in that moment. And I think that's pretty normal, but overall, like, it's just such a healthy distraction. And I think no matter what you're going through in life, I mean, that's what hobbies are for. You know, having something positive in your life to distract yourself, to give you something to look forward to. And it doesn't necessarily mean in terms of dolls to be full-blown materialistic and just buy, because I can tell you from personal experience that, like, no dolls will fill that void that you're feeling, like, when you purchase them. But just having, like, something to do with them, I found really helpful. And even as, like, a grown woman in her 30s, it has helped me. Healthy to confront, like, your negative feelings and to allow yourself to feel them. But there's a point where when you dwell on the negative feelings, whether you're dwelling on your grief or you're dwelling on your anxiety or you're dwelling on your depression, that it's not productive and it's actually destructive. And I know for me, like, the way my brain works is when I have, like, something I'm fixating on, like a problem, I guess, like, I always need an answer. I always need closure to something, and I think of my brain as like a bunch of filing cabinets, and I'm kind of like every day running back and forth frantically opening up these files and looking through these files over and over again. Like, by doing that and obsessing over these things in life, then I'm suddenly going to have like that magical aha moment that I'm looking for. And it's not healthy, and I know I have like very negative self-talk, and for me, like, if I can't get over something, if I can't move on from something, if I can't be happy, I beat myself up over it because I feel like I'm wasting valuable time in life by dwelling on things, and then that kind of just creates this negative cycle of more negative thoughts and me feeling worse about myself. And I, like, physically need that distraction to get me out of my own head, and I think a lot of people can relate to this, even if it's on like a smaller scale. It's just not always healthy to perseverate, and whether you're like really depressed because you've lost somebody or there's something stressful going on outside of your life, it's like important to let yourself feel those negative emotions, but there's also a point where you need to pull yourself away and kind of like find something else to focus on, because dwelling on those things is never gonna like change your situation. And I know this firsthand because it took me a really long time to grieve the loss of my mother, about 7 years. I mean, the first like 2 years were the hardest, but I was like a very unhappy, very depressed teenager who just hid it very well, and I only really finished grieving my mother when my dad was diagnosed with cancer, and I wasted so much time, and I could have, you know, enjoyed the positive things that I did have in my life more if I hadn't been so sucked into that void of like grief. I do wish that like I hadn't pushed dolls out of my life at some point as a teenager, because I was going through a lot. I think being a teenager is very hard. Like, I don't know why people say they want to go back to being teenagers, because I know I wouldn't. I hated being a teenager. It was like the most awkward, uncomfortable time in my life, and I really wish I had had dolls to help me get through that. But I took like a 5-year break, as I've mentioned before on my channel, because I felt like awkward and embarrassed, but my interest was definitely always there, and it was just something that really would have helped me get through those awkward teen years for sure. And so if you're, you know, someone who likes dolls, and maybe you're in that awkward time in your life where you're like a teenager and you feel like you're supposed to grow up and not play with dolls or enjoy dolls or collect dolls, if it makes you happy and like it makes your day a little bit better and it takes your mind off of like the bad things that are going on, don't give up on it, because your life is going to be a lot harder if you do. You're going to be a lot more unhappy, because I know for me, not having that distraction in my teen years, it really just, my mental health spiraled out of control. Like, I was very, very depressed. Like, a physical benefit to having things that make you happy, whatever it may be with dolls or other things. I definitely think that there's just a lot of facets of doll collecting that have helped me through. I know I have like a really detailed post on Flickr called What My Dolls Mean to Me, where I went into a lot of detail about how they were there for me, specifically after I lost my dad. But just like even going and like thrifting for them, whether or not I found things, like the act of like getting out of the house and like being on a doll hunt kind of took me out of that negative space. I know I've talked, like I said, about it on my channel in the passing and in more depth in certain videos, but never made a full video just dedicated to this. And I guess this is a topic that I do bring up from time to time, and I'm open about, because I know for me specifically, as a not even teenager when my mother passed away, there's this stigma about like talking about people who've passed away, especially when you're younger. Like nobody ever talked to me about it when I was in school, and I remember specifically hearing other kids criticize other people in my class who like maybe had lost a parent or their parent was sick, and it was frowned upon, like, you need to get over it. And I just think it's like very cruel how people, and I mean adults can do this too, expect you to get over things on like their timetable. And I think it's just like important to not compare yourself to other people's situations, and to like take the time you need to heal yourself. And if you want to talk about like your parent or your loved one that passed away, or you want to have pictures up, or there's things that you want to do to like honor their memory, I think that that's on you. Like, you should never let anyone make you feel bad for being open about that, because I know, like, I feel guilty because like a lot of people didn't even know I like had a mom at some point, or what happened to my mom in school, because I never talked about her, and she was this amazing person, and I felt like I actually lost a lot of my memories of her because I didn't talk about her, and because I didn't keep it alive. And that's one of the reasons why I am so vocal about it on my channel, because I don't want people to feel the same shame that I felt and the same guilt. And I feel like there's this ancient Egyptian belief that you die twice. The first time is when your body physically dies, and the second time is when people stop speaking your name. And I think that's so true. Like, once we go, the way that we continue to live on is through like the people that we've left behind, and how they remember us. And I think that that's a beautiful thing. And that doesn't mean that like you need to dwell on it every day and like constantly remind people, but I don't know, I think it's like nice when I look at my dolls and I can remember like that day that my dad bought me this doll, or you know, that my mom said this about an American Girl. It's just like a little way to kind of remember these small insignificant moments that I might have otherwise forgotten. And I think that that's a really beautiful thing, and I think that it shouldn't be seen as like a negative thing to do. The way that I've personally kept the memory of my parents alive, like one of the ways. So I hope that this could help you out in some way, whether it's the person who asked for this video or maybe someone else. I know I haven't like really made a lot of sit-down videos like this where I talked about deep things in a long time. There's a few reasons for that. I think one was I just felt really awkward. I mean, in the first place I'm awkward now, but you know, after I got a lot of like negative feedback over the years on YouTube, there was a time where I was still kind of a little bit, not traumatized because it's a really dramatic word, but like I would feel physical anxiety to sit down and film something like this, because I could just hear what people were gonna say and nitpick in the comments. And that's mostly subsided now, but there was a time where I was just sort of like not interested in like being face to face with the camera. And then also because I feel like I made so many videos my first few years that I don't want to be redundant and talk about the same things. And while dolls still impact my life like every day, I think that a lot of like my growth as a person, it's not something directly linked anymore to my doll collecting, whereas they were a huge part of like my growth in my early 20s, and just kind of like finding self-acceptance and dealing with the loss of my dad. And I started making YouTube videos a few years after that, and so it was all very fresh in my mind, and I can't really like connect that as much with like present problems. But this was actually a topic like in terms of dealing with like anxiety and depression and stuff that they still really have helped me with, even as recently as the past couple of years, and they've kind of helped me maintain my sanity. And that's also why my videos sometimes are like pretty old, and I might go a little bit of time without uploading, because you know I have been going through things behind the scenes, and I've just tried to keep it moving on my channel, but it can be difficult like to, I guess, present and come on camera and appear. I'm kind of finally at a better place right now, and I'm really feeling a lot more inspired by my dolls and more inspired to make videos. That's all I really have to say, and I hope that this can reach somebody out there, even if it's just one person. And until next time, love your dolls, love yourself, and love your life. And love Covey.